Hello and welcome to Paul Bentley Limited, where today I would like to take you around this very special, one-of-a-kind, one-of-one 911. Now you might be looking at this thinking, 993 Turbo Coupe, cool, certainly, but what on earth makes this a one-of-one? Well, do I have a story to tell you? And let's start with the name, because technically this isn't called a Turbo Coupe. This is actually called the Last Waltz, dubbed as such by Porsche themselves. So why on earth is it called that? And what on earth makes this a one-of-one? Well, let me tell you the story. And let's start with the name. Why is it called the Last Waltz? Well, there are a couple of reasons. The first being this is the last ever air-cooled Porsche to have ever left Porsche's factory. Now I can hear you now, some of you saying, oh, but I thought Jerry Seinfeld owned the very last air-cooled Porsche. And this is where we get into technicalities somewhat, because Jerry Seinfeld's Carrera 4S was the very last built, but this was the very last to leave the factory. This left the factory almost a year after Jerry's car, because this took quite a lengthy trip to the Special Wishes department, the exclusive arm of the exclusive arm of the exclusive manufacturer arm of Porsche's customization department. And this is where the story gets a little more interesting.
Because exactly 3 hours and 7 minutes after this car left the production line, headed for the Special Wishes department, Mr. Ferry Porsche, the CEO of Porsche at the time, sadly passed away. Now, coincidentally, this car was ordered by a close friend of Ferry Porsche, a German writer named Klaus Wanderberg.
Upon learning of the passing of Ferry Porsche, Porsche and Klaus decided to dedicate this car to Mr. Ferry Porsche. Quite a charming little story, isn't it? Named the Last Waltz because it was the last air-cooled Porsche to leave the factory, marking the end of an era. The end of what a lot of people would consider to be peak Porsche, and also the fact that this was the last car made under the stewardship of Mr. Ferry Porsche himself, and then dedicated to him by his friend, who then went on to purchase this car. Now that is a great little story, and both sides of that story are represented by respective plaques that you can find inside the car. The first can be found on the dashboard, which contains a quote from a 1994 German movie that I am not going to attempt to pronounce. It's a quote from the movie that says something along the lines of, "Only the memories we carry with us, the dreams we spin, and the desires that drive us are true. And with that, we can be content." Very poetic, probably. I don't understand the significance of the film itself. Maybe it was a favourite of Mr. Ferry Porsche. I'm not actually too sure. Of course, the quote itself does somewhat imply automotive. And that's not the only plaque in the car. There is also a plaque inside the driver's door that reads as such: Klaus Wanderberg, received today the last classic Porsche 911 993 Turbo with an air-cooled boxer engine. And then, puzzlingly underneath that, in English, in all capitals, "The beat is yours forever!" exclamation mark, which, as far as I'm aware, and considering the fact it is in English and not German, I believe that's a Meatloaf quote from Rock and Roll Dreams Come Through. Is that the song? I don't know, I'm not much of a Meatloaf guy, but apparently either Klaus Wanderberg or Ferry Porsche were, hence the quote in the door. Very interesting, very unusual. I didn't expect to see a Meatloaf quote on a one-of-one 911, but here we are. Maybe it was a bit of an in-joke between Ferry Porsche and Klaus Wanderberg, considering they were friends. That's certainly one of the more poetic answers. Reality, I don't know, maybe the guy who made the plaque just particularly liked Meatloaf and thought, this is my chance. Now that's not where the interesting features of this car end, because as I mentioned earlier in this video, this did spend a lengthy stay at the Special Wishes department. So what is it that makes this car so special wishy? Well, first of all, you might have noticed the paintwork. At a glance, it looks black or maybe even navy, and I don't know if the camera will do this justice, but when the light hits it just right, it is the most stunning, deep, metallic blue, and is actually named Ocean Blue, very fittingly. And some of you eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that it's not just the body that is painted in this colour, but also the wheels and the brake calipers, also body match. And that would be considered fairly flashy these days, so for 1998, that was a particularly standout feature. And once again, that's not where it ends, because the ocean blue continues on the inside as well, where we go from ocean blue to what is known as night blue, because almost every inch of the interior has been covered with a very complimentary night blue leather. Very few parts of this interior manage to avoid being touched by the night blue leather. Everything from the seats, the center console, the dashboard, the roof, the sun visors, the speaker frames, the door handles, the dials on the dashboard, almost everything has been adorned in night blue leather. And those things that couldn't be have been colour matched in a complementary blue plastic to match. Things such as the speaker grills, for example, or the window switches. Porsche really made sure that absolutely everything was blue and everything matched. And once again, that's not where this car's interesting features end, because whilst this was at the Special Wishes department, they didn't just tinker with the way it looks. This had a number of performance modifications as well. Starting at the front, this had an optional extra strut brace, which wouldn't usually be particularly interesting, but this one is quite interesting because you can't even see it. It was an optional extra that you can't even see because it's covered by the custom-made, colour-matched mat that you'll find lining the entire of the front trunk. It's in a matching blue cloth and night blue leather lining. Yes, your optional extra strut brace that you can't even see because it's covered by part of your other optional extras. Very interesting. And then underneath that strut brace, you'll find another optional extra, which is the larger 92-litre fuel tank. I think the standard 993's fuel tank was about 75 litres, I want to say. Moving to the middle of the car, of course, we've covered the interior that literally couldn't be any more blue than it is. And then moving on to the rear, where you'll find the twin exit exhaust. And of course, let's not forget about the engine, because this car has the upgraded WLS2 engine pushing out about 450 horsepower. So it's not just for show, it can move as well. Again, I don't think the camera will do it justice, but the paint is just beautiful. Now, if you're ever fortunate enough to get the chance to see this in person, spoiler alert, you probably won't. This is now in a private collection. Very rarely see sunlight, so it's very unlikely that you will see it. But if you are ever fortunate enough to see this vehicle, it just looks incredible. This vehicle actually, after it was owned by Klaus Vonderberg, spent about 16 years in a private collection in Japan. It then came back to Europe and had a little bit of a stay in Belgium, but is now situated in the United Kingdom. So there we go, the Last Waltz. Very last air-cooled Porsche to leave the factory, very last car made under Ferry Porsche's stewardship, owned by a close friend of his, dedicated to him by his friend and Porsche. It really is a milestone car. So it's a unicorn. Incredible story, incredible looks, incredible to drive. This really is a one of a kind. Please do take the time to like and subscribe. Do stick around because we will have many very special cars to be showing you. I mean, there's another one sat just here, but we don't care about such pedestrian things when talking about such a car, do we? But yeah, do stick around. We've got plenty of cars to be talking to you about in the future. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you very soon. Take care.